don't give the game away, but we are live. It will be starting in 20 seconds. How exciting. Exciting time. And I should also remember to tell people, join in and say hello and that sort of thing. But, you know.
Yeah, and answer questions. You did that so well last time.
I know. Well, hopefully we'll get a few, but you never know. Hopefully they'll join in and say that they're watching. That's the thing. Oh, look, it's happening. It's happening. Here we go. Ready or not? I leave too many blanks there. Just anyway, hello and welcome to What Did They Do Before? Where your amazing, juicy, wonderful children's authors extraordinaire and a chicken answer your questions about what did people in the past do before certain things were invented. And this week it is clocks. What did we do before clocks? Over me, toward this side of me is wonderful Caroline Lawrence. Hello, Caroline. And Galina, the chicken.
Galina. So when I go into schools, I often show this slide, which is one of my favorite slides. And it's a slide showing artifacts that we have nowadays. Can we have the first slide, please?
Oh, yeah, of course we can. Hang on. Oh.
It shows artifacts that we have today. There's Galina. There we go. So those are some things that we have today that I think, what did they do before they had these things? And I often ask kids, which of these things in like ancient Greece or ancient Rome, which of these objects that are everyday objects that we have today, which would have been the most valuable? And this is a great topic for discussion. You can put up this slide and just be thinking about it. And there's no wrong answer, no right answer, although I feel very strongly. And maybe at the very end, I'll ask Izzy to say if she can guess which one of those things I think would be worth its weight in gold in ancient Roman times. So today,
tomato. It's got to be a tomato, surely, hasn't it?
A tomato. You think a tomato?
They're Italians with no pizza.
I know, no pizza. It's crazy. So today we're thinking about alarm clocks. Here we are in London. Or Reading, in Greenwich Mean Time. It's got dark before the sun has set. It's not even 4 o'clock. Well, it is 4 o'clock now. The sun's just set. So thinking about clocks a lot. And what's really fascinating to me is I read this amazing theory that in olden days, timekeeping was an oral thing that you did through hearing or through the five senses, like especially the sense of hearing. Can any of you think of a way where you can tell time through hearing? And it's not a clock ticking, because they didn't have clocks back then. They didn't have alarm clocks as we do today. And what do you think, Izzy? Any ideas?
Well, the sun doesn't make a noise as it gets higher. If the sun sang or something, it got closer or further away, but that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's hard to tell. I have an idea, but I think you're going to give. I think you should. You gave the game away earlier by holding up Galina, didn't you?
Holding up Galina, roosters. Can we have our first rooster slide? Rooster cockcrow was a really important aspect of ancient life, and probably still is if you live in the country. But us London city dwellers, I mean, I can probably count the number of times I've heard a rooster in my life on maybe my hands and my toes. But roosters were a real part of ancient life. And we often, if you don't live in the country, you might think they crow at dawn, but they don't. They crow in the middle of the night. And often the third crow is about 4 in the morning. And then they crow, their final crow is at daybreak. So monks and various other people often counted their days, the times they prayed, by the cock crow, which could be in the early hours of the morning. Of course, you've also got birdsong, the dawn chorus. You've got any other ways? Can you think of any other sensory ways, especially sound, Izzy, that might have woken the ancient
snoring
world?
when people are snoring, it's nighttime.
Snoring is a good one. Of course, later on in medieval times, you've got church bells and things calling the faithful to mass. But in Roman times, they did have bells as well. This is my little copper bell that I'm sure I've spoken in before. And we have one reference to a copper bell from my favorite poet, my favorite Latin poet, Martial. Yes, Martial.
Marshall, see.
Valerius Valerius. And he has a great poem, a great epigram about Christmas or Saturnalia gifts. And he has a poem about the tintinnabulum, the bell at the baths. And it's a little 2-line poem. It's so cute in Latin. I wonder if you can see that. It says,
goodness, yeah.
give back the ball. Sonat ice termarum, the bronze of the hot baths is sounding. And then he says, ludere pergus, you're going to carry on playing? And then he goes, Virgine vis sola lotus abire domum. What, do you want to go home, abire domum, having washed only in the Aqua Virgo, which was a notoriously cold aqueduct of water? So the baths, that's another way that you might tell time. The baths might mark the opening of the baths at midday, or when they turn off the furnace so the water starts to go cold.
So you can actually literally feel it getting colder.
Feel it. There's one more way. I've been watching The Crown on TV, as many people have.
Oh, yeah.
There's one more way you could wake someone up without either sound or visual, or using aspects of those. Can you think what I'm talking about, Izzy? How do
using sound of it? So sensory stuff. I mean, the bakers, if the bakers bake bread and you smell that, that'll wake you up to get hungry.
How do they wake up the Queen every morning?
I don't know. I just leave her. She could chop your head off. I wouldn't wake her up.
No, she'll chop your head off if you don't wake her up.
Oh no!
The maid comes in with the tray of tea, opens the curtains, a bit like your mums, a lot of you. Your mum is the one who comes in and says, time to get up, sleepyhead, and she maybe tousles your head and opens the curtains.
Pulling the duvet off you.
It's the whole sensory experience, and the smell of tea and toast, perhaps. So what fun fact have you got for me, Izzy?
Well, the idea is that we've got now that, you know, we all carry, a lot of us have watches, and we've even got watches now represented on our phone, and we have them on our wrists and everything else. There is a watch. And what did we do before watches? And which is kind of a counterintuitive thing, because believe it or not, watches were not invented to tell the time. There weren't devices to say when you were. There were devices to tell you where you were. They were made so that you knew where you were on the planet. And they were made by a chap called Harrison. Oh, sorry, that's me too big. Look, I'm too important for you. So this chap here, his name's Harrison, and he invented, this is his 5th chronometer. And this is like a big pocket watch, and it was used to take on board a ship. I mean, isn't he beautiful? Can we just mark, look how beautiful this man is, how dapper he is. And if you look behind him here, you've got this massive clock device. So you can see all the gears and everything going. Now, the reason that he made clocks was there was a massive competition at the beginning of the 18th century, sort of 1714, that sort of time, where the British government said, we're going to give the equivalent of like £1 million, it was about £10,000 back in those days, but loads of money to somebody who can tell us how far to the west or the east of the Greenwich Meridian you are. Now, this is complicated, but if you think about it, the longitude is this. So the world is made up in latitude, which is the lines going up and down the planet. So you know how far away from the poles you are going that way. And the longitude is how far you're going round. Now, people in Britain, which is here, and in Europe and in America are all right, because we're above the equator. And there just so happens to be a star in the sky which goes right above the North Pole. So that when the Earth spins, all the stars move except that one star. So you can work out how far away from your home you are and how far along these lines you are by where that star is in the sky, because it doesn't move. Like you can work out where you are from the latitude where the sun is. But when you were south of the equator, when you are here, you can't see that star anymore, and everything moves. So you're moving, everything's moving. How on earth can you tell where you are?
Just
Well,
don't go south. Don't go south of the equator.
But all the nice stuff's there. You've got Australia there, and you've got, like, you know, all your way to China is through there, and they've got all the nice tea and stuff. So you want to go there. But in order to do it before, what they did was they did a thing called dead reckoning, which is where you measure exactly how fast you're going, and you've got your compass, so you know the direction you're going in, and you can chart it out on a map really accurately. But that means you have to stay up all night counting your exact speed. And what if there's a big storm and you get muddled? It's a nightmare. But if you know what time it is in London, and you know when it's noon in London, and you know when it's noon where you are, you'll be able to work out where you are. Because if you're here and it's like noon now, and you've got something with you like a clock saying, but it's 2 o'clock in London, therefore you know you're 30 degrees out and you're that many hours behind. So even if you're south of the equator, because the lines are all there. So by inventing this clock, Harrison allowed us to open up the planet, because every single sailor knew where they were and were able to pinpoint their position without having to look at the stars, which is the first time that has ever happened, and the maths and everything else. But the whole thing is, if you're wearing a watch, that's not to tell you the time, that is to give you your location.
That is mind-blowing. That's amazing that a watch can tell you where you are, not just when you are. That blows my mind. You
can actually do it. If you want to be really nerdy, you can do it. If it's like really sunny where you are, and it's like and it's noon, and there's a long shadow cast by a pole or something, you can use your watch and you can line it up. And then what time it really is, if you take the middle version between the time it really is and where the sun is, so it'll say, like, where the sun is, it'll say, you know, like if it's 10 o'clock and you put it at noon and the sun is on, and the line in between the two lines, exactly midway, is where north is. It's complicated.
I could never
use your watch to do that.
I even get 5 and 3 mixed up, you know, and I get 2 and 3 mixed up. So I would be a bad sea captain. I would always be getting us lost. So anyway, I that's fascinating, just fascinating. And I was saying earlier that time telling used to be oral. We used to hear it. And also I forgot to mention the town crier. They'd have a town crier.
Of course.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, and he'd walk around. He'd had a big voice.
5 o'clock and all's well.
Exactly. It wakes you up at midnight telling you everything's well. Wait, it's midnight. You just woke me up. But they also, in ancient Jerusalem, they had a temple crier, because usually they had cockerels to tell you what time to do things in the middle of the night. But no hens were allowed, and no chickens were allowed in Jerusalem for cleanliness purposes. And so they had a temple crier. And they had this one guy during the age of Herod Agrippa, about the 1st century, who could yell so loudly he could be heard for 10 miles.
Wow.
3.5
That's noisy.
3 parsangs. Amazing. But
you want him on your football team as a supporter cheering, don't you? He's the guy you want cheering from the sides.
Totally. So first of all, you get sound comes to you. Later on, you go and seek first of all, the time comes to you through sound, but later on you seek it out through clock towers on the church, or your wristwatch, or one of the earliest visual clocks, if we have our next slide, was a Roman sundial. And this, of course, is it has to be sunny, and the sun will cast a shadow. And again, it's incredibly complicated. And just as we were getting ready to do this show, my dear friend, Dr. Sophie Hay, who is an archaeologist who digs in Pompeii, sent me one of her favorite Roman sundials, which is a portable sundial.
Look at that.
There it is. It's a portable sundial in the shape of a ham. Do not ask me why it's in the shape of a ham. And to give you an idea,
hamdy. It's hamdy.
It's a, what did she call it? She called it not a pork chop, but a pork clock. Anyway, it's about, to give you an idea of the size, it's about as big as my R2D2 key ring right here.
Which the Romans didn't have.
The Romans didn't have R2D2 or key rings. Well, they did have key rings, but let's look at that again. That's amazing. That is a portable sundial made of bronze. And it has it on the left. You see there's a little thing like an arm. It's slightly bent, but when you poked it out, it actually could tell the time. That is absolutely amazing. So that's a very ingenious way that the Romans had. And you can't really do it in a cloudy country, but you can do it in a sunny country like Italy or Greece.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trouble with living in Britain, is there isn't much sunlight, especially at this time of year. But that's how they used to divide up the time, of course. I mean, if you were in feudal Britain, in the Middle Ages, and I think that's how the Romans did it as well. They sort of divided the day up into 10 hours of daylight and 10 hours of night. I think I might be wrong with the Romans, but certainly this is how the feudal hours did it. And they would just, and it would depend on how long the day was. So in winter, an hour was really quick. It was like 40 minutes. But in summer, where the sun rises at like 4 a.m. and sets at like 10 p.m., an hour was nearly 2 hours long, which is a long time.
Exactly. In ancient Rome, they did what we did. They had 24 hours with 12 and 12. But in the summer, the hours of daylight were longer and the hours of night were shorter. So they actually had hours were movable. They could, as you know, they could get,
in many ways, it's so much more practical, because right now being 4 o'clock is ridiculous. I'm getting ready to go to bed.
In Rome, it would be now 6 o'clock. It would be, and when they say like the first hour or the second hour, that's like the first hour from 6 in the morning. So the first hour is like, when they say the third hour in the book of Acts in the Bible, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's 3 plus 6, the third hour. Yeah.
There we go. Well, finally, and very, very quickly, that isn't the only way that people heard and also told the time. Right? We talked about using sundials. We've talked about hearing cocks crow and that sort of thing. What about smelling the time?
Oh,
that's right. You could smell the time. This here is an incense clock. So this is one type of incense clock. So actually, this is orally a way that you'd hear the time, because you'd light this bit of incense and the incense would burn at an exact rate. And every time it burnt, it would burn through this string. And these here little balls would fall into the metal tray and you'd hear them. But an even better incense clock was one where you had basically incense packed into little discs, all of which burned at the same rate, but each had a different smell. So you'd wake up in the morning going, oh, it's lavender. Oh no, now it's rosemary. And as the day went, what it smelled like would tell you what time of day it was. So if you were in a room with no light, you could tell how long you'd been in there just by the fragrance.
Who invented that? Whose is that? Where is it from?
It originated in India, they think, some of the earliest examples of Indian writing on it. However, they were very popular in China and a little bit in Japan as well. And they were used mainly in religious ceremonies. So they were part of the religious.
I'd love to be woken by the smell of frangipane and then like a little yoga bell. Ding! That would be so cool.
It would be good. So if you're looking, and here's a lovely fun fact just before we go, coming in by Alicia. The Spanish siesta comes from the Roman 6th hour, hora sexta.
Yeah, that's a brilliant fact. That is a brilliant.
Isn't that great?
And my little clock says that it is now.
We've gone over. It's throw way up. There you are. It is night. We've done 4 extra minutes. That's terrible. So we're going to go now, but we'll be back next week at 4 o'clock with some more. What did they do before? Bye.
Bye.